We are so excited to have you guys joining us today. This is Shh, we're talking a weekly live stream that myself and my two fabulous co-hosts host, typically weekly, but every once in a while, depending on the time of year, bi-weekly. Today's topic, we're going to be talking crowdfunding. I feel like all of us have experience with it. And I think it's going to be a really good conversation, good topic. And for once, hi, Elaine. I will actually introduce myself. My name is Michelle Jackson. I run a project called Creators Getting Paid. I interview creators to find out what they are getting paid, how they are monetizing their brands, and I share that with my audience. What's noteworthy about this project is I typically interview probably 80% of the people I interview are Black or Brown creators, with about 20% being allies. I also run a project called Square State Colorado, which is clearly all about the state of Colorado and the city of Denver. Do. Corey.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Corey Gums. I am the founder of the Black Podcasters Association. I'm also the founder of a newsletter right here on Substack called blackpodnews.com. BLK Pod News is the only trade paper dedicated to the podcasting space, um, the podcast industry for professionals and anyone else that's just looking to learn about it. So I'm also sitting board member of Air Media, a large organization for independent radio producers and podcasters now. And that's it.
Hey everybody, my name is Angela, and before I get into introducing myself, I would love to know where you guys are calling in from. So please put in city, state, not your full address. We don't want anybody doxing their address here. Just city and state is fine. Let us know where you're calling in from. We'd love to know what you guys are hanging out with us tonight. Because for me, it's 8 o'clock on the East Coast, and I am the writer of two newsletters. One is called Please Hustle Responsibly, which is a newsletter community for creators and entrepreneurs who want to learn, connect, and grow together. And I also write Melanin MVP, which is for women of color athletes and sports fans. So if you're a woman of color, or if you're not a woman of color, but you're still a fan of women's sports and you're an everyday athlete and want to learn more about their stories, please encourage you to check that out. Both of them can be found here on Substack. We got, of course, Denver for Michelle, Queens for Corey, Michigan for Sean Smith. What's up? Thank you guys for joining us today. Also, I would be remiss because I'm also cheekily trying to see who's in Richmond, Virginia, because Corey and I are hosting an event in Richmond, Virginia on November 7th, November 8th, one of those days.
November 7th.
That weekend. November 7th. And we would love for you to join us. It's free to join. Drinks are on you, though. And it's going to be a great time.
Resonate.
Yeah, Resonate. Yeah.
We're still trying to indoctrinate Michelle into coming. She hasn't experienced the beautifulness of this event yet, but she will.
I want to go, but the problem is the time of year. I'm just like, I'm good. But
this will be probably, because I know how you feel about the conference with Michelle. This probably be one you would really enjoy.
I believe I would love it, actually. Yeah. It's just, I know I would love it. It's not even I believe. I know I would love it. The problem is timing for me. It's not always great. So that doesn't matter. Today we're talking about crowdfunding. And I think what I'd like to do is ask the audience before we talk about our experiences. When I mention crowdfunding from the creator perspective, what comes to mind? Like when I say a creator is going to crowdfund, what do you as an audience member, or what do you as a person who's building something online think about? So feel free to add that to the chat. And I'm going to pick on Corey to kind of share, has he crowdfunded before, what it was, what project it was for, and kind of what the experience was like.
Oh, you mean a project? Okay.
or whatever. It doesn't have to be however it happened.
I haven't personally crowdfunded yet, only because I don't have a project that I think requires that right now. I know a couple people who have, and I do suggest it to some people that I know that are trying to get some projects off the ground. For instance, my friend Adele is crowdfunding right now for her wonderful documentary about losing mothers and the journey that Black women have been on with that. So if you're following me, check it out. I've been sharing it, support it. But I think there's a time and place for crowdfunding. Now I remember when crowdfunding started first came out, a while back, and that became like a thing for people. I learned about it being in the tech space and from talking to some Black founders because that was the only way they could get funding. For the seed money they needed to get their projects rolling. So I'm a proponent for it. I just don't think it fits every project, and I also am a little concerned in regards to equity positions and stuff like that. So I'm always very cautious about how people structure their crowdfunding campaigns, especially with some of these platforms that are used to help get funding for like startups and stuff. So, but I think there's a place for it from creators, especially if you have a very engaged audience that wants to see you win. Um, but I also like to tell people be cautious because from an audience because there's a lot of grifters out there. Look, let's just get it out now. Let's just get it out the way
Okay.
now. You got to. I think it's a good way to get funding for your project, but I think people need to be realistic about like what kind of money they're trying to raise. You know, I think I'm always about getting the low hanging fruit. So if you need $1,000, I think that's easier to crowdfund than $10,000. Um, depending on your network,
Mm.
depending on your network, depending on your network. We're talking about creators. We're not talking about people like. Listen, this is a nuanced conversation.
No, keep
See,
going, because I
because I
think
see
you
people
brought up
struggling.
something interesting. Yeah.
No, because I see people try it, and then the campaign, and they get frustrated. I have somebody right now that I'm working with, and she's trying to raise capital. She's been trying to get, she's been crowdfunding, and she's been doing it for a while, and all she raised was $600. And I see the frustration on her side, and I'm trying to get her to explain, like, some of it is the marketing of the campaign, it's to target who you're targeting, right? But um, I felt like if she went for 1,000, it might have been easier for her to get that 1,000 than what she's trying to accomplish with her crowdfunding campaign.
I feel like we're going to have a very long conversation tonight.
That's fine because I already know what you're going to say,
uh,
Michelle, because
Angela.
you've told us about your project. So
Well, let's have Angela go next because she has a cool project that she's crowdfunded for.
Yeah, I want to touch on, before I get into that though, I want to touch on like your assertion that like might be easier to crowdfund for less than to crowdfund for more, essentially. And I actually think the amount of money, how do I say this without like, I think
just
the
say
amount
it.
of money is important. The amount of money is important. I think one, it's important because it's good for you to know your numbers as a creator, which a lot of creators don't. Like, if you're asking for 10,000, you need to have a plan for that 10,000 because then it becomes easier to tell people what they're giving their money to. Like,
Yeah.
let's say you have a podcast that you want to crowdfund for it. You're like, hey, I self-funded the first season. This is what we were able to do with the first season. Here are the gains that I feel like are worth investing in that could exponentially move the show forward in terms of listenership, in terms of impact, um, and in terms of the quality of guests that we're able to have because we can go to people instead of only doing remotes, things like that. If you have a clear understanding of what this $10,000 is going to be used for, it becomes a little bit, the messaging for the crowdfund becomes a little easier. So it's less about, even if that's $1,000, if you feel like $1,000 is what you want to raise versus 10,000, it's less about the pure amount and more about what the amount is going for. Number two, I think a lot of the times that I see people getting frustrated with crowd funds is because they didn't do any ask before the crowd fund started. I think a lot of people assume that the crowd fund is just the setting up of a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo or whatever platform you use, and then you put it on social. And then, of course, because you have a certain number of followers or a certain number of people who love your work, they're going to support. Um, and that is to the dismay of many people. I think because we see these crowd funds that are way more than $10,000 a lot of times, people are like, oh, I can reach that. That person doesn't have as many followers as me. And I try to encourage people, like people that I've seen on Threads, people that I've seen on LinkedIn, people that have come to me for crowdfunding advice. Like, don't depend on social media. Social media is flattery. Really, where social media comes in is when you're closer to your goal, because unfortunately, people like to see that a crowdfund is doing well before they jump in. When I did a crowdfund for a short film, we did a 30-day crowdfund, which is basically like either you reach it or you lose it. We hit our goal within 2 weeks, and we still kept getting donations from people only on social. I didn't do any hard ask after we hit our goal. Everything else was just people seeing it on social that we had hit it. And it's because people like to see that something has already been successful. Hate it, love it. That's just the reality. With people that don't know you as well as you think they do, or people that are mainly people who support you on social that you don't have a direct connection to. I would say realistically, you should have a plan for getting 50% of your goal met within the first 3 to 7 days of a crowdfund. And that needs to be money raised from people. You're doing a direct one-to-one ask. A lot of people don't hit their crowdfund goals because they are afraid to make a direct one-to-one ask to someone, whether that be in a text message or an email or a virtual call or in-person coffee, something like that. So I hate it for your friend. I hate it that she's stuck at $600, but the reality is the gap between 600 and 10,000 for her is going to be her putting herself out there and directly asking people for money. And
I mean, that was my conversation with her. So,
yeah,
but you know,
yeah.
Angela, how
So
much did you raise for yours?
my goal was 4,000. I should have asked for more. That's another story. But we raised just shy of 5,000. Yeah. If I were to do it again, and I've already said this privately, I would be going for somewhere in the range of 25 to 50,000 if I were to crowdfund again.
So I'm going to share my story briefly, and then I think we should talk tactics afterwards. So in my case, I hosted a an event in 2019 called Money on the Mountain. I hosted it here in Denver. And as I was putting it together, I was all excited. And then I was like, oh shit, I need to raise more money. Now, there were a couple of reasons why. One, it was just an expensive event to put together for my finances at the time. Two, I believe in accessibility. So part of raising the money was also to like kind of defray the cost to the attendee. It was a small event. There were 30 attendees. People flew from, Canada across the US to come to Denver. So that was a big deal. And so I ended up like about a month before, I was like, I'm feeling stressed about the money situation. I cannot be in the red. I need to figure this out. And so what I did, to Angela's point, I decided to fund a little informally. So I reached out to all the people that I knew, very relationship focused, and I was like, hey, these were people I've never asked anything of, but I've shown up for these people. I knew them. I know them well. And I was like, hey guys, you know what I've been working on? They knew I was doing this event. And I was like, I would love any kind of support for Money on the Mountain. I would appreciate it so much. And by the end of that outreach, I raised $10,000. And so one of the things there were a couple of things that were really interesting about that experience. So I asked a variety of different types of people, black, white, what have you, men, women, strangers. There were people that I met randomly at an event here in Denver that happened around that time called Denver Startup Week. And we were literally at an event for women founders. And I was like, yeah, my name is whatever, and this is what I'm doing. And this person in line was like, "Oh, like how much is a ticket?" I'm like, "It's this." They're like, "Okay, we'll buy that and buy someone else's ticket." Like you would be shocked, in my view, how easy it is to appeal to people if it's clear to them what your what the like what the purpose is. And they were all lovely. There were people that I know very well. They're like, "Hey, here's like $500. You don't have to tell anybody about it." Because usually you would put it like in the thank you, like the little thank you section of the PowerPoint or whatever. I had friends who were like, "It's an anonymous donation. Don't worry about it." Never worried about it. Never asked like, "Could you prove XYZ with the money?" Nothing. They just were like, "Here you go. Here you go." And I will say, like, I donate to crowd funds. I'm not trying to figure out what people are doing. I trust that it'll be fine because typically if I'm donating, there is some level of belief in the person, or the project, or both, right? So there's a project that a young lady has been crowdfunding for a while, around providing um, feminine hygiene products for women, Black women in particular, who've lost their jobs. And
Mhm.
she's
Yeah, I
raised
know. Yeah, I've seen that.
around, yeah, I would love to interview her, but she's raised around, at this point, I want to say probably $6,000 or $7,000 on Threads, actually, because that's where I first came across that project. And so I guess my bringing up this is to say, most times people, when they're doing a crowdfunding campaign, I've interviewed several people who've done crowdfunding campaigns. Most recently, Nikki Payne, a romance author who was part of I think the most successful romance crowdfunding campaign ever. There were um, eight authors who combined their forces to do a campaign. At this point, they've raised $1.4 million. They started early with that project, so they started planning out, really thinking about that. Um, Last year they had to write novellas because that was part of the campaign, their authors, and they killed it. And these were authors who felt like their creative work would not be traditionally published or supported. They are correct, actually. And so they're like, we're going to do this a different way. So I think there's also a conversation around the design of your crowdfund. I've interviewed Anela Malik recently about her $55,000 crowdfunding campaign so that she could design and produce a TV series all about uh, black uh, black food across the United States. And she's going to be she's recording everything now, and then that will go on to YouTube. And then I also interviewed Anna Deshawn, who raised I want to say $75,000,
Yeah, it was 70. Yeah.
so that uh, she could design a tech, like a SaaS tool, basically an app.
The
So
cube, or app
The
the
cube,
cube.
yeah.
the cube. So I've had the experience of crowdfunding, observing other people's crowdfunding campaigns, and also just having conversations with people who've had pretty successful ones. And it's been very interesting to me to see like what the commonalities were, what the tips were. One tip that I'll never forget came from Anna Deshawn, and she said you have to understand who your ideal contributor is and what their money is like. So part of like how she designed the campaign was to think about how people get paid, right? So she wasn't assuming that people had tons of money saved or whatever was going on. She assumed that people might have financial pressures that were impacting their ability to give in that moment. So she made sure to follow up. She made sure to really think about like people's payment cycles, and really having enough time to even get like having enough time to allow people to plan in their budget, even if it's $5, $10, what have you, to support her because they love her and the work that she was doing. And so I think that was something I'll always remember is like think about how people get paid because sometimes things are tight, but they still want to give you what they can. But if it's too short a campaign, it's really difficult to do. Questions, anybody? Thoughts? They're too quiet for my liking. You guys, I
Mhm.
like I feel like
There.
everyone's thinking. Yeah, I'm like, are you thinking? Like, is this something that surprises you? Um,
Can I
have
jump in here for a
Yeah, go for
second?
it. Go for
I
it.
think when we talk about crowdfunding, especially when it is presented as an option for revenue generation. It's not as sexy as a brand deal. It's not as sexy as applying for a grant. Um, and part of that, I think, is the intrinsic knowledge of people doing exactly what you said, thinking about who your ideal contributor would be and really evaluating if you feel like confident in their ability and desire to give to you specifically. And I think a lot of people maybe, even if they can't articulate it or feel shy about articulating it, probably know that their network probably isn't as big as their crowdfunding goal. So they say, well, I'm just not going to ask them for money. I want my work to be accessible to them. I don't want to charge my audience or my community to view this project. What I want to do is I want to apply for 10 grants and maybe get one, and that still does not cover the cost of the project, and I've waited 6 months for this. Or they want to try to get a brand deal when, quite frankly, a lot of people, myself included, don't have big enough audiences to warrant the payoff that a brand deal or even multiple brand deals would um, come in at the cost that they're paying you. And what I mean by that is when I crowdfunded, I had less than 500 people on my email list. I know I had less than 500 people. That's not
Mm.
desirable for a brand. Let's just be real. I had maybe 10,000 on LinkedIn. That helped, but LinkedIn was still and is still fairly new. Um, and even on LinkedIn, I'm more of a thought leader than an influencer slash UGC creator. So again,
Mhm.
my face wasn't super all over LinkedIn. It was mainly my words that had gotten me that, and my community and actually meeting people in person that had gotten me to that 10,000. Um, so I was not super attractive for brand deals for a film like that.
Mhm.
And then when we look at grants, I know firsthand you have to apply to a ton of grants, and not all grants are just like, cool, are you a podcaster? Are you a filmmaker? Pitch us your project. It's like, no, we
Yeah.
want specific filmmakers, specific projects, specific time, specific deliverables. Um, and if you're working with people, we want you to work with 75% or more people of color or women.
Mhm.
Stuff like, not just that, but just some
Mhm.
things. So the requirements for each grant completely different. The timeline for each grant completely different. The expediency of receiving grant funds once you are awarded the grant completely different. So we're talking about super delayed gratification on a project, even if you do win, the 10 out of 10 grants. So crowdfunding to me is the fastest way and
Mhm.
the most direct way to fund a project and to have the most creative control over the output of said project. Now, addressing some fears here about network. And this is, I would say, even the same as if you're doing a launch on Product Hunt, for example. The prep is generally similar. And it is be in community with the people that you want to support your crowdfund or that you want to support you. Maybe not even directly. Like when I first started reaching out to people, these weren't people that I connected with the goal of them supporting my crowdfund. These are just people that I knew and met and had shown up for, as Michelle said, over time, just organically, because I wanted to support them. I wanted to be in community with them, really believed in what they were doing as well. Um, and I think that's one thing. You really got to be out there. You can't expect to just like, and I know we're all writers here on Substack. Okay, I know you want to be cute and have your Sex in the City life where you write all cute on your laptop, your little prose, and you send it out to your little loyal following and you just blush at their two response. I get it. I get it. But I
Mhm.
need you to get out of your house and I need you to go meet people, whether that's at Denver Startup Week or Raleigh Durham Startup Week or all the events in New York that Corey refuses to go to for whatever reason. We're not judging. A little bit we are. But
You said
I'm just
refusing
saying.
to go to?
He's always out in the streets, whatever.
Refusing to go to? It's like 24 hours in
She's
a
messing
day.
with you. All right. She's messing with you.
But yeah, like
Uh,
you got to get outside, you got to meet people, and you got to actually form genuine connections with people, and you got to have a way to contact them. You got to get an email, my friend. You can't just be following people on Instagram and looking at those
yeah.
cute little numbers thinking they're doing something for you. I guarantee you an email is way more effective than a follower on Instagram. I'm sorry. Or a follower on your little Substack notes. I don't care what the number says. I don't care what they tell you. Get their email for crying out loud. get their doggone email. So I just had to put that out there.
I want to
But
bring up something really, 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 really important. Angela like said it quickly. The people who I raised money, like the people that I reached out to were not necessarily my audience. These were people who I knew would support me like first and then the work, right? These were
right,
people who I knew. The other thing is I realized that I've talked to more than the people I listed about their campaigns. I spoke with a friend of mine and I interviewed her. I need to find the interview in my Substack, but she produced a documentary about being from Appalachia. It became an award-winning film. She fundraised about $5,000, I want to say. It just beautiful work. And I think it was a similar thing where it was like she had this project in mind. She had this timeline. She did apply for grants, but she had to like it. The runway to get the grants is so far like away from getting the initial project that she fundraised and then all this other money came in on the back end. I also interviewed a creator who actually I did they worked with me on a brand partnership. So it was a brand called a company, a SaaS tool called Harlow. It's an invoicing tool basically. And it was so interesting being connected with them at the beginning of that project. And just I was like, how did you raise, because it's a tech startup and she was in San Francisco. So this is like a significant amount of money that they're requesting. And it was interesting because she's like, look, we asked everybody, their mama, their cousin, our cousin. Like she didn't say it quite like that, but that was what happened. Random people are, just everybody. And I think sitting down and writing really exhaustive lists and figuring out a way to email these people is huge. But then there's the follow up. You can't just like email once, you got to follow up. And in my case, I followed up twice. Most people I didn't have to do it twice, but people are busy. People have really full email inboxes, so it's good to follow up after a couple weeks. And then the tip that I always share, which is huge for anything, send a video email. I used a free Google cloud like a extension, a Google extension called Cloud HQ, and I sent a video email. It's really hard to ignore a video email. I was like, "Hi, thank you so much for all your support of all the work that I've done. This is what I'm doing. I am at the tail end of fundraising to make sure that I cover all the expenses for this project, blah, 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 blah. Here's the link below." Because I think I just used PayPal for that one. And that converted at a percentage that just shocked me. So I would definitely say that last pitch should be an email pitch. Have the video and also type it out, just because that's, I think, a good best practice. And then direct people to take an action, which is here's the link below, right? I do think you kind of have to get yourself like kind of psyched out for it, like hyped up to do a crowdfunding campaign. I think it's really difficult to do what I did, which is like overnight be like, damn, I need to raise some money and make sure that like I was motivated. But I think sometimes being that motivated and taking action fast helped me to avoid overthinking what I was doing and getting in my way. I was just super action oriented and just was like, okay, this is what I need to do. Da, 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 da. And it ended up being a very successful campaign. Um, I will also agree with Angela. So right now I'm in the process of deciding whether or not I'll do another crowdfunding campaign. I've been talking about it on and off for a couple months now, but I felt like I had to have the right project for it to make sense. To Corey's point earlier, I think I do have the right talking points and the right project and the right um, concept around what that looks like. But I feel like you have to kind of warm people up to the idea, versus what I did. I just have really good relationships with people, so it was easy to kind of reach out and do that, right? I think in general, no matter how good your relationships are with people, the more like lead time you can give them, especially in today's economy, where more and more, um, it is my opinion that creators are going to have to crowdfund more just because of funding changes and things like that. The more you can just talk about what your goals are, what your idea is, and get people warmed up longer, I think the easier it will be to hit the amounts that you're trying to hit. Um, Today, in fact, this week, I received an email for a crowdfunding campaign that a creator is doing. And I'm excited about their project. I feel like they needed more time to kind of to kind of suss out, is this the right project for the fundraising campaign? Or I feel like they needed more time to warm their audience up, even though they have a really warm audience. I think gauging whether or not the audience is excited about that project is a different conversation. So
Yeah, I didn't do none of
I
that. I didn't care. I was like, "I'm excited about this
you just
project.
jumped in and
I'm
swim.
gonna raise money."
Jump and learn how to
yeah,
swim.
but
Yeah.
but I think they're raising like over six figures, so that's a slightly,
Yeah.
I think they need a little more time. Potentially, it'll be interesting to see what the results are. I wish them only good things and success, but I I was confused about a couple components, and I think I would not be the only person. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of tighten things up and move forward with that.
I have two questions, and then I just want to make a point because I'm listening to you guys talking, and it's something that I always talk about with networking, right? It's relationship building, right? So like, all of us have basically said, like, even stuff that I do, like when I go ask for money for like the summer social or um some of these events that I try to do, it's I find the majority of the money comes from the people who I have built a relationship with. And I think you said one of the most important things, Michelle. These are people who I rarely ask them for anything. 99%
Mhm.
of the time, it's me like, hey, what do you have going on? I have this going on. Do you want to jump in on this? Or how can I help promote you? Or how can I use what I'm doing to help promote what you're doing? Right. And uh I read that wrong. I was like, Robert in Mexico. um but
I love it.
I think we need to understand, like, it's like even the person I was talking to, she's scared to put herself out there, and it's like it seems like everyone that I talk to when I mention crowdfunding, they tend to squirm in their seats and they get a little awkward, and then the conversation becomes, well, I don't want to put myself out there, or I hate asking people for money, and I'm like, well, like anything in life, and I hate to use this cliche, but a closed mouth don't get fed, right? And I had to
Mhm.
learn that really fast in this space. Was like, just because you think you have a good idea or good project doesn't mean I've learned that people assume that you're good, right? That they assume like, oh, they see
Yeah.
you're being successful. You've already started the process of filming, so they're like, oh, this person's they're great, right? And if you're just walking around thinking that you need that oh, somebody's just going to be like, oh, I see you doing this, how much money do you need? You're fooling yourself. So I think you got to start to learn to, and that was part of my conversation this weekend with the person I was talking to about her doing the crowdfunding. I was like, yo, like, you always got to be at, like, yo, I'm using the Glengarry Ross thing, always be asking, right? Always letting people know,
Mm.
I have this going on, it needs funding, it needs funding, it needs funding. And I'm gonna say this, from being in the tech side of things, the white boys are always asked. That's why they always getting the money, because they're always asking. It's like I've been at tech events where dudes are just waiting in line to go and ask somebody for money. Which I was like, that's kind of brazen. Like, you don't know this person, but it's like, I got, they do their 30-second pitch. I got this idea, blah blah blah. Here's how much money we need. Here's what
Yeah.
we're trying to do with that money. And surprisingly enough, I've seen some people get some deals off of it, or at least get a sit down and be able to pitch to the VCs or whatever, or the company. So it's like, you gotta ask, but you also gotta build relationships. The question I have, Michelle, you mentioned like doing an email, right?
Mm.
Now, I think I understand why doing a video. The video makes things a little bit more personable, right? And
Mhm.
it's scaling, right? You can convey the message in a personal way for people to listen to and engage. Plus, most people aren't used to getting that. So it's like, oh, she really thought this out. She
Yeah.
really made an effort. But how do you I think if I was listening to this conversation, one of the things I'd be confused is, do if I have 1,000 people on my email list, do I have to sit here and make a list a personable email to each one of those people? And I'm asking that because that is something that people feel like, they start to get in their brains and being like, I need to I need to ask this person directly versus saying here's a well written pitch to my
No,
entire
so
list.
you guys, you're this is a very, very good question, but I think people are not understanding what we're talking about if they're asking this question.
No, this is
Right.
this is
So,
this is from
no,
my previous conversations. This is not
Yeah.
from tonight, but
no, I'm just saying, no, that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. Like, if people ask this, they're not understanding um what the ask is. So, emailing your email list is one thing. Reaching out to people you know or are somehow connected with you is a different thing, right?
Correct.
So right now I have just under 4,000 subscribers on Substack. If I were to do a crowdfunding campaign, thank you, been forever, I could opt to individually email them. I mean, people do it. They put in the hard hours and they just sit there. They just do it slowly but steadily, and they're like they craft with hopefully a tool or not a very personable, warm outreach to each individual person. They could do that, or you put together a list of your family members, your colleagues, your kickball league people, your random baristas that you hang out with who always hook you up, um, the editors of a huge, these are people on my list, editors of a huge podcast locally. Like, you just, all the professional, like, I'm in Colorado Association for Black Journalists, all the journalists that I know, like, you sit down, you don't just vibe it out and be like, I'm going to do this thing and then I'm just going to email my list. No, there's much more intention. You sit down and you just write a list of all the people you know. You've had a conversation with them. You've connected with them. Then it's all the people, like the warm leads, warm to hot, and then the cold leads, like people who maybe you've had a quick little email back and forth, whatever, or a social media back and forth, whatever. And then that's them. And then you sit your butt in the seat and you start outreaching to them, reaching out, connecting. Hey, this is what's going on. But for the people in your audience, like specifically in your audience, personally, I would start to put together content in your feed, in your in your podcast, newsletter, blast, stuff like that about this is coming. So that again, people, it's not completely out of the blue, right? Like, that would be my one lesson that I learned, where I think I would have had even more success with my campaign, which I felt was pretty successful, if even I had a month longer to be like, this is what I'm up to. I could have been on social media talking about it. The doors will be opening in a few weeks. I just wanted to answer questions just to prep people, especially when the economy is the way that it is now and people are really thinking about trust and thinking about their spending decisions a little more, even if they have money, even if they're like they're flush, they're good, there's still, everyone's kind of like, I'm up for this, but like, what are you doing? Like, it has to just, you have to sit down and write down, what's the project, what's the outcome, who does it serve, what's the point, why are you doing a crowdfunding campaign, what, like, it just has to be clear to you before you start doing the outreach to other people.
So real quick, I want to piggyback off of what Michelle just said. So I put a link in the chat that goes to basically a freebie of a crowdfunding checklist that I put together, along with a script that I use to outreach individually one-to-one to people that I knew. So my list of one-to-one people that I knew is a little bit different. It's people that maybe they've asked me to speak and I've spoken to their group or accelerator or their class for free. Those people showed up. It's people that I'm on you can't see the chat. Okay,
What do you
that's a
mean?
problem.
The chat or the link that she shared in the chat?
I don't know. I think
Because I can see the
you have to
chat.
We've no be able. We can see the chat. I think the problem is. I think Substack changed some settings or whatever because
Oh,
now we had this
They
problem
okay.
keep telling me
before.
that they can't see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
only people, I guess,
That's
paid
so
people or whatever.
annoying.
But there's no setting when you set up a live to change it. I listen anyway.
Uh,
I'm sorry, guys, if you can't see the
I'm
chat.
so
sorry,
sorry.
We'll share that.
Shamiko.
We'll share that. We'll share that on the comment section, Angela.
Okay.
Yeah,
When this
we'll do
publishes,
that.
we'll put that in the comment section.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, I asked people that I had just formed relationships with. They weren't necessarily people I didn't know. I think that kind of defeats the purpose. They could, if that's the case, I'm just gonna send it out to my email list, which I did. I prepped them maybe a week in advance. I said, hey, because Seed and Spark, and I don't know about other places, but Seed and Spark is specifically for films. Um, so Seed and Spark has a way that you can like pre set up like a pre situation with a crowdfund. And so I set it up where up to a week in advance, people could give and have early access to like rewards and stuff if they did it for a week. So that was like my prep. But after that, honey, it was just balls to the wall. I also had I also had a video trailer, but again, it was a film. I think it's fine. I think people should take the time to like do a direct to camera. Like they really should take the time to like speak directly to people about their project, even if it's not a visual project, even if it's a book that you're writing, it's, maybe a tabletop game, it's an event, whatever. Like I still think you should take the time to do a direct to camera video reel for any crowdfund that you do. I didn't put that link in the email. I only did that for brands that I was reaching out to. So if it was like a corporate kind of, I was looking for like a corporate donation, a corporate brand, a corporate sponsor, then I put in that video like crowdfund trailer. But for everybody else, I just put that on my LinkedIn or I would embed it directly into like my weekly like emails during that time. But for people that I was one-to-one reaching out with, they didn't care. And I also
Yeah.
think people should be given other options too. Like, yeah, you can donate, but also, hey, if you're not in a place to donate, could you please share this? Like, that would be really
Yeah.
helpful for me. And think about what are some other ways you could get earned attention during the time of your crowdfund. I would say the bigger the crowdfund is, the more earned attention that you need. We had to connect with the local news station, or we could have done a video interview if we had got it in time, which again, I was just like, I had a semi plan for the first 7 days, and that was it. After that, it was crazy. So if we had a plan more, if I were going to do it again, I would try to get at least, I mean, bare minimum, at least one TV outlet and one print/digital outlet to cover the crowdfund story. Um, I think that's really important. Sorry, Corey, you're about to say something.
Yeah, my other question I have, but at the beginning of the conversation, I said I didn't have a project that I could think of for crowdfunding. And while y'all were talking, I was like, I have two projects now. One is our summer social that's going to be revamped because I'm currently working on a new VPA where we're revamping a lot of our stuff. And, but we're also going to be doing our own conference in 2027. So I'm going to start that process with my partners and sponsorship director. We're going to start working on looking at crowdfunding as a way to at least get the project started and ready to roll. Um, so I just want to say that. But the other question I had was, again, and you guys kind of touched on it throughout the conversation, but I know there's a lot of people out here. I know there's a lot of people out here that are like they're still scared, right? How do we address the fear? And I just want to shout out Coach Todd, just because some people can't see the chat. She said, "You never know who has money." I learned
Mm-hmm.
that. People asking, "Why didn't you ask me?" Like, huh? And that is true. Like that goes back to what I was saying. If you don't ask or you don't let no people know you need funding, you never know who's sitting on what. Somebody could have got some money from a state sale, or somebody could have just won a small lotto. Some lottery money, whatever.
Or maybe they might be a small earner, but a good investor. I know a lot of people
Right?
who
Yeah.
haven't earned a lot of money, but they got money quietly because they've been quietly just like buying stocks for a minute. This goes back to the whole, like, I don't want to assume anything about what's going on with people's money. Because some of the people, like, I used to work in education. This is true. The most millionaires out there, that like millionaires next door, are teachers. They stay in the same job forever. They quietly invest. They live in small places. And I worked with a lot of like professors, teachers and stuff. They had money. They were frugal, but they just like I said, they invested and they didn't spend on stupid stuff, and so they had the cash to pay for certain things. So you'd be shocked.
Yeah, I get the conversation just in general when you just talk about asking for money and raising money. And maybe that's an issue with in our community. Sometimes
Mm,
with Black people, it's like I don't want to pocket watch. I'm not trying to pocket watch people,
mm,
but I'm
mm,
like, but you are. You're not asking people for money, right? You're like,
mm.
you're already making assumptions that you don't even know what's going on, and I think I always my mentality is always I'll take $20, right? I'll take $50. It may not get me exactly to my goal, but it's getting me $5 closer to my goal, right? So doing that, like how do we address the fear part? Like how do we help people feel more comfortable with being able to ask? Is that a cultural thing? Is that a way they were raised? Like how do we help these people overcome that? Because these
Mhm.
conversations you happen a lot of why they don't want to ask. We can't ignore that part.
So I have two things here. One of them is that a lot of creators blatantly, vehemently do not want to deal with the business side of things. And the reality is that if you're a creator, you have to have a sales process. Doing a crowdfund is the exact same thing. It's just asking for a sale.
Yeah.
That's it. And a lot of the creators that I know, and I remember this even before I went full time. This is back when I was living in Birmingham. I learned so quickly that the creators that were making the most money, that were full time, that were the most sustainable, were not necessarily the most talented. They were just the best at asking for money. Point blank, period. So whatever you got to do to get around your fear. I personally bought a course from a creator who was selling like her average wedding budget was $10,000 for photography. And I was like, dude, it don't even matter where the quality is good. It's the fact she has the ovaries to ask for this amount. We get it. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So and she's not that much. She's just a person. So like, I need to be able to do that. So figure out your sales process, do what you got to do, buy your course, go to somebody's training class. Like you need to get comfortable with sales. That's the point blank of that. The second thing I was going to say is around timeliness. Like depending on your project and depending on the subject, you got to get good at understanding timing. Like as
Mm,
of right now, I wouldn't crowdfund right now. I would wait until election season starts kicking up because then people are actively looking to donate money. That's already a season where people are primed to donate money. So it's very likely that people are already preparing for that. And they're going to, like, when I crowdfunded in 2024, it was basically May of 2024. Joe Biden had already said he was going to run for reelection. Money was already flowing. So I think it was just like, and then people are already out thinking about, okay, I need a budget for summer travel and summer vacation. So I think money was already being spent, right? So it's easy for us to like be a part of that wave of like money being spent, right? Like if you look at the housing market right now, like I'm blessed that our house sold pretty quickly, but for the most part, houses are sitting right now. Houses are not moving fast depending on your market. So this is probably a pretty good indicator. Money is not moving freely. You know what I'm saying? Like back in the pandemic when houses was flying off the shelves and people was putting down 30, 40, 50K due diligence, which is crazy, by the way. Like that would have been a great time to crowdfund because people was already ready. The people that had the money, they were just waiting for time and opportunity. And you could have been the right opportunity for them at that time. If you're looking to crowdfund, generally speaking, I would probably wait until the next election cycle, which is 2026, gets into high gear because that's when people are already going to be primed to spend. Now, depending on the project, that's different. Like the period project, I think is timely because when you say 300,000 Black women are awful or have
yeah.
been unceremoniously pushed out of the workforce, those Black women got periods. They need period products. Yes.
Now they need
Now,
it now. Yeah.
the timeliness speaks for itself. So you also have to think about like what are the moments that you're capitalizing on that people can kind of intrinsically understand. People have
Wait till
money.
they
They're just
read.
waiting for something that moves them to give. That's correct. That's correct.
I want to talk about. I feel like Corey brought up a really important point around fear. But I also want to push back on this idea that crowdfunding is this new thing specific to technology. We have always, as a community, for Black people, for
Deuces.
Hispanic people, stuff like that. I mean, not even Susus, like just across communities have had to fundraise in order to do certain things because we did not have access to funding. This is not new. That's why churches were a place for that. Like this is not a new thing that we're doing. I think the technology access piece is throwing people off
Yeah.
when they're thinking about it. I also think that um, clarity around the project is huge. Like if you just sit there one day and you're like, I'm gonna crowd fund because I need money to run the campaign or run this project. That's different than I have this project that I'm putting together and it's going to do XYZ and it's helping XYZ people and this is why it's so impactful. Like the period project that we're talking about, we don't even know this woman's name. We understand everything about this project. I'm sold. I didn't have to be sold hard on it. I'm sold. And I think that when people struggle with their crowdfunding campaigns, there's a couple components that aren't coming together. I think timing is an issue. I think clarity and just sitting down and like figuring out all those talking points, like what are people going to ask you about? Did you practice on a friend answering back like whatever, questions or concerns that people bring up? No one brought up concerns with me, by the way, when I was talking about my campaign. They just were like, "Oh, who's it for?" I was like, "It's for women. We're going to talk about money. We've got, we're going to have panels." And that was it. Like, no, it was not that hard to get their money. It just wasn't. I had friends who were like, "Here's $500." Like, it wasn't a lot of small donations. It was like a mix where people were just like, "Here's, 300, like whatever." Okay. So I think when people struggle with a campaign, they need to like maybe pause, step back and rethink the campaign and clarify some points so that it's clear to the people that they're pitching. They need a list of people to pitch to. So have they just been like, "I'm going to do a campaign and I'm going to just reach out to like 7 people." That's not enough people, right? Like it just has to be, I think, a lot more thoughtful, even if it's a short turnaround. Then I feel like most people doing a crowdfunding campaign, especially as creators, I think it's so. Sadly, a friend of mine had a house fire. It happened this weekend. I'm so grateful that they're okay. If that friend shares a link, I'm sending money. I don't need any kind of like, you don't have to explain nothing to me. I saw a picture of your house. I think it's very different when you're funding a piece of work, a space, a community. You got to put in some work behind that before you start reaching out to people for money. It needs to be so much more clear and thought out, and you have to be sold on the project. You can't just be like, "Well, I love my podcast, so I'd love for people to like support it." Like that's not how that works. You have to be like, "My podcast is amazing. I'm the only person talking about this in this space. This is why it's so transformative and you have to be sold. If you're not sold on it, how am I supposed to sell it? You know? I do think money always flows. I do think also the economy is shit. But I also think that people have a lot of money. So the other day, a couple weeks ago, I was in Boulder, which is where I grew up. There's a lot of money in Boulder. And when I tell you those people are completely unbothered, I saw their clothing, the quality of their clothing, what they were doing. Same thing, in Denver, walking around, like observe people, right? Maybe you ask more of the people who are in other communities that have. And again, this goes back to what I said before. I was pitching people who were not going to be in any way, um, you know, impacted by the work that I was doing. They were not the audience, but they still had the funding. And I think that is important to think about. I asked men for money, and those men were great and gave me money. They were not women going to a podcasting, or excuse me, a personal finance uh, content focused event. It wasn't for them. But did they have money? Yes. And I said yes to the money they gave me. Thanks, guys. So I think that's important. I also think, to Angela's point, you have to practice selling. And maybe if you're that nervous about selling in general, you maybe you develop a small product, and that's the thing you sell over and over again until you have the confidence to do a crowdfunding campaign. Maybe you develop an affiliate marketing campaign. That actually is easier because the product is already designed and you don't have to fulfill it, but you probably have something that you loved. So before I kicked Target to the curb, I was a huge Target fan, like many people. And Target had all these basically affiliate marketers. People would see like I went to Target, I bought something, and people would be like, "Oh, where'd you get that?" Target. I got it this week at the week, blah, 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 and I was like able to like share those talking points, blah blah blah. So if you can't do that with your own project, you got to practice with someone else's product that you're in love with, and that might be practicing how to sell with affiliate marketing, so that when you have a project that you're trying to fund, you can be so enthusiastic, so sold, so personable, so energized, so excited that the people who receive your pitches, maybe they cannot fund it. Maybe they cannot provide you even $5. That's fine. Maybe they have a big audience that they can share your project with. So when Angela earlier was like, maybe they're not going to fund you, but you give them another thing that they could do. Not too many things. Like there's three things. You could shout me out, fund me, um, share. No, two things: shout me out or fund me. That's it. Keep it simple. So I think the other thing might be people are giving their audience too many tasks. Don't do that. Two things: shout me out, fund me, because then it's an easy decision for the person receiving your pitch.
I have a question for both of y'all. And Michelle, you mentioned you gave people PayPal. Did you, when your campaigns, did you use a platform like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, or did you do it directly through your, through your own pay accepting app or
That
whatever?
time, that time through PayPal. This time I wouldn't do that. I would do it through a platform.
Could you,
For the
why would,
one I'm thinking of, I think that it's easier to fulfill. Also, like, I just feel like PayPal, I'm okay with. I want to decouple as much as I can from PayPal just in general. So I think it's better to have like your bank account set up so it transfers to your bank account versus through PayPal. I don't know. I think a platform where it's designed for that is a little bit better for like bonus items and things like that, where you can show it a little more clearly than like PayPal. I think the interface is not as good. Um, so I would do like Kickstarter or
and PayPal is
Indiegogo.
always changing hands.
Yeah,
PayPal
like
is always changing hands every couple of years.
that yeah, that's something I've been thinking about quite a bit actually, is like uh going through like my affiliate programs that I'm a part of, stuff like that, and seeing if I can switch to like uh electronic funds transfer versus PayPal. So that's a winter project. But it's up to people what they want to do. It may be that for the first one, that's the easiest way to do it for you. But I just would say the interface is not as clean as I think I would want it for my next crowdfunding campaign. So like the romance crowdfunding campaign, those ladies had bundles that they put together, digital items, books and stuff, and then they had actual physical books. They had a mix of things, and so I think having a platform where I can easily share what that is better. Um, do you mean like a pre-sale, like a pre-sale on Eventbrite? I think absolutely. So Coach Ty, everybody was saying you could set up, um, you could set something up as an advanced event on Eventbrite. Kind of leans into pre-sale territory for me, which is 100% fine. I love that. But I think if you're gonna fulfill like bonus items, that would be the only thing. Like, how clear is it on the platform what the bonus items are? Because those bonuses could be the thing that people opt in for, like they donate more because of the bonus. So that's something I'm thinking about for upcoming crowdfunding campaigns if I decide to do that.
And what about if you do a platform like Kickstarter or Indiegogo or some kind of crowdfunding platform? What do you like? What are some of those bonus? Like, how do you suggest people do like a bonus or like the bonuses for the tiers that people offer? Like, I think that also might be a problem. And I know it goes back to what you guys were saying earlier about preparation and really thinking about your project, and planning it out. But how do you go? Like, what would be some advice for somebody that wants to do a campaign and it's like, well, what do I offer in return for this campaign?
Well, Anella, it was so funny. I was like, "Did you?" When I was talking to her, I was like, "Did you do any bonuses?" She's like, "No, I was trying to raise money to even do the project." So,
Okay, so
I
you
mean,
don't. It's not
you
a
don't have
requirement.
to. No, you
Okay.
don't have to. And I thought it was hilarious because she wasn't wrong. But I think that um, it depends on the bandwidth you have. I think it depends on the project. I personally would not. I would be very careful about doing anything that's like, if you pay XYZ, I will fulfill a thing for you. No, don't do that. Like, do something that's easy for you to do. Like, you don't want to do, you want to fulfill um,
I think
a
I can jump
bonus,
in
but
here.
but wait. I want
Okay.
you to fulfill a bonus, but I want you to be careful about, is it something that you are physically having to do for people versus like something that's really straightforward and cool actually for you to fulfill. So I think it depends on the project, but maybe it's one or two things that you're fulfilling, but that's at a higher like donation tier. Just be careful with that, personally speaking. But again, it depends on your bandwidth.
Okay, so I have a completely different take on this. I think that if you are going to be using a platform to crowdfund a project, they naturally have it built in where you have tiers for people, and people get certain things for certain tiers. Here's a couple of things that was recommended to me when I used Seed and Spark, which again is specifically for people who are trying to raise money for films. I think there probably might be slightly different recommendations for Kickstarter, for Indiegogo, but you also have to think about the type of projects that do well on Kickstarter. The type of projects that do well on Kickstarter are projects that you kind of need pre-seed capital for, but they may not be things that people want to directly invest in. So for example, physical products. A lot of the wearables, Peak Design to this day still uses Kickstarter to get the manufacturing cost more affordable ahead of people buying. So it's like you
Mhm.
maybe pay like this specific amount, $49, that gives you something. $100 is like your discounted price from what the full retail item would be if you waited until they ordered a full shipment, for example. You pay $200, you get two of those, like whatever it is. I think that works really well on Kickstarter because again, but the understanding with Kickstarter with any physical product is it's going to be months in fulfillment because you're essentially just
Mhm.
pre-ordering a product at a discounted price so that they can do bulk pricing with the manufacturer without going into the red to self-fund this physical product. Again, Peak Design for almost every new product that they put out, they do
Mhm.
this still on Kickstarter. So a lot of them still come through Kickstarter. Um, but then you see on the flip side, companies like Ugmonk, which is like paper products, they don't do a Kickstarter for each thing. They just buy basically a limited quantity, sells out really fast. And because of that, better or worse manufacturer demand, when they are able to afford a full shipment at bulk cost, then they still sell out because they've already manufactured like, oh, this is something people really want. But again, I'm getting off topic. I think you should give bonus products. I think it depends on
No,
what type
no,
of project you're doing. I
I
understand what you're
wasn't
saying.
saying not
No.
to. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. But I think like your thing is like, well, people are just barely trying to afford a project. So build in rewards that naturally fit what you're trying to do. For me, for my film projects, like the first one, they said pretty much for all film projects, they recommended don't do anything physical. Because again, like you said, that's a lot of time out of you to like try to get everybody's, like if you're doing a t-shirt, trying to get everybody's t-shirt size, trying to get everybody's mailing address. And then you have to go mail it and figure out post, like that's a lot. the fulfillment side of things versus you'll get a shout out on social media for giving $25. That's way easier to fulfill, right? Like that's not a big lift on your end. Or if, for example, for us, we did a screening. The screening was free anyway, but we could have said, hey, if you give $100, you get free access to the film screening. If you're already planning on doing a film screening, that's not a big deal. And ideally, you want people to view your film anyway. So that's like incentive to like get people excited about it. We did a virtual screening. We did an in-person screening. I can't remember 100% what our tiers were, but they were all digital things that didn't require a whole lot from us. Like we were already planning on doing that as part of the film. I think some people do really well with like bloopers and outtakes for film. You could even do that with a podcast, bloopers and outtakes. Behind the scenes, if you, for Anila, I don't know if she's going to have a behind the scenes photo video person, but if you're doing something like that, give them access to unlimited, only people who donate get access to see our behind the scenes process into making this film, or you get to see it a week before everybody else gets to see it. So if you're already planning on putting one out anyway, you're just hyping up the demand for people who are supporting you. You're giving them an exclusive experience that they wouldn't have gotten if they didn't support. They would have to wait a little bit longer, for example. I think with any reward tiers, to echo Michelle, yes, it should be easy for you to fulfill. But if you're going to crowdfund for a project and you know you're going to crowdfund for a project, build that into your process and build that into the budget for that.
I
Like for
actually,
Anila.
we're 100% in agreement, actually.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with this. But I
Yeah, but I
just
think it
think,
came off of you
yeah,
saying like, don't do it if it's going to be hard for you to fulfill. And it's like, well, you can do it. Just make it easy for you to fulfill. Like, don't try to go out of your way to do something super crazy that's going to cost you more money that you didn't budget into the cost of the project. And it's going to take you more time. And it's going to honestly end up being a bad experience for people who donated to you. Now they're waiting 6 months for a t-shirt that costs more than what
yeah.
you had budgeted for the project. So like,
No, I think we're 100% in agreement on this. If if you're using a platform, so it kind of goes back to what Corey was asking about. If I'm on PayPal asking like the people that I was asking, then there's no like mechanism with that platform to show bonuses and stuff. It would have been incredibly complicated. If
correct.
I'm on any of these other platforms, you definitely it makes sense to add in the bonuses, but to my point, I want the whole crowdfunding campaign is complicated as it is. Angela is 100% right to build in. Actually, this is very important what she's saying. Build in the cost of the time to fulfill that piece, and I feel like that's like one of those like we need to asterisk that seriously. Build in
Yeah,
the time to fulfill that.
I think too, when it comes to crowdfunds, like the ones that I see not doing well is because they haven't thought through the bonuses. They haven't thought through the
Mm,
tiers and what makes
mm,
sense for each tier. But that goes back to basically pre-production for a crowdfund research. Yeah, 66. I
mhm.
see you, Coach Doc, keeping track. But like build in time to research similar projects that have raised similar amounts and see what that money is going for. I know film projects that they do a different crowdfund for each part of the filmmaking process. They do it for pre-production,
Well,
they do it for production, they do it for post-production. So just editing is its own crowdfund. And then they do it for
well,
distribution, trying to get a film screening. If they're going to pay for a venue, that's on y'all. But you get tickets to comes because that helps them out. So like think there's different ways to look at it, but doing your research, don't just say, I'm excited about this new podcast. I want people to give me money. Like, that's just not going to cut it. Like, doing
right.
your research on what other similar projects have done, what exactly they crowdfunded for, how much they raised, how long it took them. Did they do a 30-day, a 60-day, a 90-day?
Mhm,
What were their tiers priced at? Did they do? Was there a 25? Was there even a $5 tier? I didn't do a $5 tier. I started at
mm.
25. Some people start at 5, some people start at $1. What is the gamut for what people are paying and what they're asking for each tier, and what people are determining is worth each. So like obviously nobody's giving away executive producer credits at their $25 tier or their $5 tier. That's going to be the
Mm.
highest tier
One of
frankly
the things
speaking.
that I randomly thought of as we were talking about this is that we keep saying crowdfunding campaigns, but they they can happen in many different ways, right? Like how people can financially signal that they're supporting a project can happen in a lot of ways off of platforms. So I was at an Anthony Mackie. You guys know the actor Anthony Mackie. So
No,
he had,
not
I'm just throwing, some people in the audience don't, all right?
Captain
Anyway,
America.
whatever. He filmed this movie about these people in Colorado that were trapped by like basically aliens, and he had to like go and get medicine for his son. Anyway, it's a cool movie. He actually had the what do you call it, the premiere in Denver. I saw him. I was like, hey, Anthony Mackie. He's very handsome in person, by the way, and it was a fun movie to watch. Okay, my point is this: he developed this project. They produced it. It's a fun watch, whatever. But um how he got people to sign on and say yes to that project would say be a crowdfunding campaign. Did he call it that? Probably not. You know, it's a small little project that he produced. It's a little random. It's in Colorado, which feels more random, but he got it done. So I think sometimes just envisioning how people can opt into what you're doing without taking ownership of your project, which is the other key point with crowdfunding. It's not VC funding where they want a little percentage of the ownership. This is like, we're giving you money. We want to see this become a thing and we move on. That's why Patreon exists. Patrons back in the day, that's how the Sistine Chapel was done. It's about one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life in person. And basically, I forget the artist. I can see it in
Michelangelo.
my Michelangelo was paid by, the church to do it. They were his patrons for this project. So it could be that you have a person or two who have really deep pockets and they're just like, we're invested. A good example is Mackenzie, who used to be married to Jeff Bezos, but she changed her last name. Anyway, and she's just giving money to HBCUs. She just has all this money. She's like, here you go, because you're not getting federal money. So I just got the money. I'm going to give it to you. So it could be that you design a thing that catches the eye of a person who's just like, hey, I've got the money and I'm bored. And here you go. Like it could be just as simple as that, but you have to actually design these really cool things in order for other people to be excited about them enough to fund them too, whether it's a small amount or a large amount. I do want to talk about tiered pricing as we begin to wrap up the conversation.
Okay, oh God, I was about to say, you're losing me a little bit here. It's been a long day.
No, I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired, guys. We everybody, we started talking. We got on this, and we were all like, "We need naps." And Corey's like, "I had a nap, so
I
we
still
were
need a
tired."
nap.
Yeah. I want to like kind of talk about tiers, and then we can just wrap it up. I do think if you're doing a crowdfunding campaign, um, ideally you have more than one pricing tier or an open-ended donate what you can, right? Um, Bonuses are great as well. Uh, we just talked about like how that can be structured and making sure that you add making sure, yes, he did, Shamiko, making sure that you add the cost of fulfilling things into your fundraiser, into your crowdfunding campaign. But I do think it's important to have multiple tiers, that not a billion tiers, but like, you know, three to seven at the most, so that people have a choice and that they can land on a price that makes sense for them. I definitely believe in tiered pricing. What about you guys?
Yeah, that's
Oh
just,
yeah.
if you're using a crowdfund platform, that's just the lay of the land. People are going to expect that, I think.
I feel like people need to be guided. Like, just in general, with a lot of things, I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this without being insulted. But I mean, sometimes people are looking like they don't know. Like if you put it open ended
Yeah.
and say, just give me whatever, it's like, I want to give you, I don't know what you need. Right. So, but if you do a tier kind of says, hey, here's the minimum I need. And here's, and of course, if you do maximum, I'll sweeten the pot or whatever it is you're trying to do. But I think sometimes just leaving something open ended, just like asking an open ended question, you never know what the answer is going to be. I think if you're trying
Mm,
to raise money, you need, like you said, God's been saying this whole conversation, you need to be very specific on what you need to do. And I think the ask needs to be very simple, because the tier thing too could get really out of control as well, right? So I
mm.
think, like, back to what you were saying, Michelle, like keep it like two tasks, right? Like here's like maybe two or three tiers the most of like on how you can support. Um, because I've seen some Kickstarter campaigns, especially back in the days, where it would be like all these different options and all these different things, and I'm
Ugh.
like, okay, like what do I, like I want to, like you get into like what is it, almost like
Analysis paralysis.
analysis paralysis or seller purgatory, whatever word you want to use, right? And then the person just becomes overwhelmed. It's like, well, I'm out. Like I'll figure this out another day, and then they forget about it, and then you lost somebody that was willing to give you money. So I think tier helps keep things simple. It lets people know the minimum of the ask, and
Mm.
I think that's the biggest part for it. It lets people know the minimum of what you want them to give you, and that goes to your planning on like what the budget is and how fast you want to get to your goal.
Yeah. There's like a whole other part of this conversation that we didn't get into, which is like how we communicate with the people who have donated throughout the crowdfund. But that's like a whole other
That's
topic. Like
another
how do
day.
you make like
I mean,
your
we could probably encompass that into a conversation about like sponsorship, because I've had conversations
Mm.
behind the scenes about how people have sponsored events and don't like that the fact that they've been ghosted, or they don't get any any response, or they don't get any of the materials that were promised, and I'm
yeah,
like, that's wild, that's crazy to me, and even just or thank you.
yeah,
Mm.
Sometimes a thank you goes a long way. So I think definitely that's a conversation we probably need to have, not just crowdfunding, but in general about raising
right.
money
Mm.
and stuff. So
Yeah, points are being made. All right. Well, that's been an hour plus of you guys, 70 of you guys. I was hoping it was going to end on 69 because 69 is fun, but I will take 70.
it's not,
We're getting slap happy now, all right?
on that note, see y'all later.
Wait. Okay.
Sorry.
So before we go, one thing. If you guys could do us a huge favor and share this live stream so that people could get in front of the replay. The share button is that little V, like little Pac-Man situation in the right-hand corner. uh, Girl, you know what? I'm trying to focus. If you could share that, that'd be awesome. And then Angela is causing problems today. If you could introduce yourself uh, or reintroduce yourself, that'd be great.
Clearly, I need no introduction, but all right, to newsletters. I'm joking. My, y'all minds are in the gutter. My God. To the
Oh
70 of
man.
you who have kept it together. My name is Angela. All right. 9:20. Exactly. All right. Two newsletters. Please hustle responsibly and Melanin MVP. You can find those projects here on my Substack. Corey, what about you?
Corey Gums, founder of Black Podcast Association. I run Black Pod News, blkpodnews.com, newsletter right here on Substack. So make sure you subscribe if you're interested in learning about the Black side of things in the podcast industry.
Bum, bum, bum.
Well,
And
I would like
hey,
this.
we're a mess. Uh, my name is Michelle Jackson. I do actually have an uncle, Michael Jackson. I just talked to him last night. He's awesome. But I run a project called Creators Getting Paid. I ask people, primarily Black and Brown creators, how they're getting paid as they leverage the internet as a way to grow their businesses, brands, etc. You can find that here on Substack. I also run a project called Square State Colorado because Colorado is square. There's a podcast that goes with it too. So if you have questions about, you know what, there's a whole viral video about Denver. Denver stayed in the news this weekend. So, I'm just saying, check it out. It's fun. And I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed this one, by the way. You too. You guys are fun. Just saying.
This is
Same,
good.
same.
All
Then
right.
Now
I'll
it's,
See you
check
guys.
everybody next
now it's
week.
time to go to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye,
All right. Have a good night,
guys.
everyone.